You claim to want a different existence. You speak of discipline, consistency, and tangible results as if they were items on a shopping list that you simply haven't found the right store for yet. The narrative is familiar. There is a superior version of your life, and you are convinced that you are in the process of reaching for it. Every day you tell yourself that you are moving toward a better arrangement of your circumstances, waiting for the moment when your effort finally matches your ambition. But there is a question that almost never surfaces in this story. It isn't about failure, and it certainly isn't about a lack of capacity. The question is far more unsettling. What would actually happen if everything functioned exactly as you say you want it to? If the effort you put in actually yielded the absolute transformation you describe, would you be prepared to inhabit that reality? Or are you merely in love with the idea of being someone who is trying? This internal friction is rarely acknowledged. You focus on the difficulty of the climb because that focus allows you to ignore the terrifying height of the summit. If you were to succeed, the person you are right now would lose their primary reason for existing. Your current identity is built entirely around the struggle, the not yet, and the promise of a future that never arrives. You have created a comfortable psychological nest within your own dissatisfaction. To truly change would mean to set fire to that nest and stand exposed in a reality where you can no longer blame your lack of progress on external factors. The tension you feel isn't the weight of the work. It is the instinctive recoil from a success that would demand a version of you that doesn't exist yet. You aren't fighting against your limitations. You are protecting yourself from the consequences of your own potential. Before we descend further into the mechanics of your own stagnation, consider the value of looking directly at what you usually avoid. If this examination resonates with the friction in your life, you may want to ensure you are present for the revelations to come by following this channel and enabling notifications. Observe the way you organize your days. You construct elaborate frameworks for a life you haven't started living. You buy the books, you download the tools, and you announce your intentions with a conviction that feels almost like the achievement itself. For a few weeks, the momentum is undeniable. You wake up earlier, you focus harder, and you tell yourself that this time the inertia has been broken. But look at what happens next. The enthusiasm evaporates as the reality of the work settles in. The moment the novelty wears off and the actual labor of transformation begins to demand your presence, you find a reason to pivot. You decide that the method was flawed, or that your priorities have shifted, or that you need more preparation. This isn't a lack of knowledge. You aren't missing a secret technique or a specific piece of data. You know exactly what steps are required to reach the outcome you claim to desire. The barrier isn't intellectual, it is functional. You are caught in a cycle of constant preparation that serves as a sophisticated form of avoidance. By constantly starting over, you remain an eternal beginner, a position that carries no risk and requires no accountability. As long as you are getting ready, you are safe from the judgment of actually being. You have mastered the art of the false start, using the high of a new beginning to mask the terror of a real conclusion. The pattern isn't a failure of will. It is a successful defense mechanism designed to keep your current reality exactly as it is. When the path becomes clear and the obstacles begin to vanish, you instinctively create new complications. You introduce unnecessary variables or set impossible standards that ensure the project remains in a state of perpetual potential. This behavior reveals a hidden truth about your intentions. You are more committed to the act of striving than you are to the result of your labor. This rhythm of effort followed by strategic retreat is how you maintain the illusion of progress without ever having to face the consequences of success. Each time you abandon a project or allow your discipline to dissolve, you tell yourself a story about bad timing or insufficient resources. You ignore the fact that the interruptions always occur at the exact moment when the change would have become irreversible. You are navigating your life with one foot on the accelerator and the other firmly on the brake, ensuring that while the engine makes a lot of noise, the vehicle never actually leaves the driveway. This internal sabotage is not a flaw in your character. It is the primary tool your mind uses to protect the identity you have spent years perfecting. We must consider a possibility that is fundamentally uncomfortable. The difficulty of your goal is not what stops you. The actual barrier is the person you would become if you reached it. When you speak of success, you envision it as an addition, as if you could simply layer new achievements onto your current self, like new clothes. But a plan that functions as intended is not an addition, it is a subtraction. It requires the removal of the habits, the social circles, and the internal justifications that define your present reality. If your discipline were to become absolute, the you who currently finds solace in being misunderstood or displaced or overlooked would have to die. This is the paradox of the breakthrough. The very thing you claim to seek is the greatest threat to the stability of your current ego. Currently, your frustrations provide you with a sense of purpose. They give you a reason to complain, a reason to seek sympathy, and a reason to delay the heavy lifting of existence. If the obstacles were removed, you would be left with a vacuum. You would no longer have the luxury of saying, "I could be great if only." You would simply be. And for many, the reality of being is far more terrifying than the fantasy of becoming. This is why the moment of true progress feels like a crisis. As you get closer to the life you want, the gravity of your old self pulls harder. You begin to feel an inexplicable urge to ruin the momentum. You pick fights, you lose focus, or you indulge in old vices. These are not lapses in judgment. They are survival instincts. Your psyche is sensing the imminent destruction of its current form and is fighting to stay alive. You aren't failing at your goals. You are succeeding at remaining who you are. The internal architecture of your life is designed for stasis, not for evolution. To move forward, you must accept that the person who arrives at the destination will not be the person who started the journey. Most people are not prepared for that funeral. Friedrich Nietzsche frequently observed the profound difficulty of becoming what one is. At first glance, this sounds like an invitation to a more authentic life, a call to shed the layers of societal expectation. But Nietzsche's analysis was far more clinical and unforgiving. He recognized that the human spirit is not a vessel waiting to be filled, but a structure that must be constantly dismantled to be rebuilt. To evolve into a higher version of yourself is not an act of growth, it is an act of destruction. It requires a willingness to be the executioner of your own history. Most people speak of self-improvement as if it were a pleasant stroll through a garden, ignoring the reality that any significant change involves the violent uprooting of everything that once felt stable. For Nietzsche, the resistance you feel is not a lack of strength. It is a fundamental commitment to the comfort of your current equilibrium. You have spent years constructing an identity that functions within your present limitations. You have developed a specific way of speaking, a specific set of excuses, and a specific social role that depends entirely on you remaining exactly as you are. To actually embody the power you claim to want would render that entire internal world obsolete. Nietzsche understood that the will to power is often thwarted by a much stronger instinct, the will to preserve the ego. You are more afraid of the void that follows a transformation than you are of the stagnation that precedes it. You cling to your current frustrations because they are predictable. They provide a reliable framework for your days. The tragedy of the modern individual is the belief that one can achieve greatness while remaining the same person who desired it. You want the crown without the decapitation of the previous king. Nietzsche's philosophy suggests that the reason you stay stuck is that you are trying to negotiate with your own evolution. You want to change just enough to feel better, but not enough to actually lose the safety of your current self-image. You treat your potential as a distant star to be admired, rather than a fire that must be walked through. This intellectual distance is your greatest defense. By keeping your goals in the realm of the ideal, you ensure they never have to face the messy, destructive reality of implementation. You aren't waiting for a sign. You are waiting for a version of change that doesn't demand your death. What you call a lack of discipline is, in reality, a highly efficient survival strategy. Your mind is not failing you. It is protecting the current version of your life with surgical precision. When you procrastinate, when you drift into meaningless distractions, or when you suddenly lose interest in a project that was going well, you aren't witnessing a glitch in your character. You are witnessing a defense mechanism. These behaviors are designed to ensure that you never reach the point of no return. As long as you are distracted, the you that you recognize remains intact. The moment a plan starts to work, the internal alarm goes off. Your psyche realizes that if this continues, the old world, the world of excuses, of being misunderstood, and of comfortable stagnation, will be permanently erased. This is why your goals are often so abstract. You speak of success, happiness, or being better, but you avoid the concrete metrics that would make these things real. Vagueness is a sanctuary. It allows you to feel like you are moving without ever forcing you to arrive. When you set a goal that is too broad, you ensure that you can never truly fail, but you also ensure you can never truly succeed. You stay in the gray area where nothing is ever at stake. If you were to commit to a specific, measurable transformation, the feedback would be immediate and undeniable. You would have to face the fact that you are either doing the work or you aren't. By keeping things vague and constantly shifting your focus, you maintain a state of perpetual potential, the could-be that never has to face the reality of is. Consider the timing of your distractions. They never happen when you are failing. They happen when you are winning. You sabotage the momentum exactly when the results start to manifest. You create a crisis in your personal life, you suddenly need a break, or you convince yourself that a different path is more aligned with your soul. These are all elegant ways to pull the emergency brake. You are terrified of the person you would have to be in a life that actually functions. You are terrified of a world where you can no longer blame your circumstances. Therefore, you manufacture obstacles to keep yourself busy with the act of overcoming, rather than the reality of having overcome. You are not a victim of your habits. You are the architect of your own imprisonment. The ultimate question is not whether you are capable of reaching your goals, but whether you could endure the life that follows. We often speak of achievement as a liberation, yet for the unprepared, it is a confinement of a different sort. A life that functions as it should is a life stripped of excuses. When you finally inhabit the reality you've claimed to want, the narrative of unrealized potential vanishes. You can no longer hide behind the idea of who you could be if only the world were different. You are simply who you are, and your results are the only evidence of your worth. This transition from becoming to being is a heavy psychological burden. It requires you to trade the infinite soft possibilities of the future for the singular, hard reality of the present. Most people are addicted to their own dissatisfaction because it provides a constant sense of movement without the risk of arrival. As long as you are struggling, you are a protagonist in a tragic drama. But if you succeed, the drama ends, and the mundane responsibility of maintenance begins. You have to show up day after day, and prove that you belong in the space you've carved out. The justification for your self-pity, your displacement, and your overthinking disappears. You are forced to face the fact that your previous failures were not the result of a cruel universe, but a choice you made to stay safe. Many would rather live in a comfortable prison of their own making than walk through a door that leads to a world where they are solely responsible for their own gravity. Consider what you would lose if your plans actually worked. You would lose the sympathy of those who bond with you over shared struggles. You would lose the right to complain about your circumstances. You would lose the shield of being the underdog. For many, these psychological anchors are more precious than the success they pursue. You are sabotaging your progress because you are mourning the loss of the person you are today. You are afraid that if you finally get what you want, you will realize that you don't actually like the person who was capable of getting it. The weight of a life that works is the weight of absolute accountability, and that is a shadow that most people spent their entire lives trying to outrun. There is something deeply human, yet incredibly frustrating, about watching someone curate their own stagnation. I see it constantly, this precise, almost artistic way people decorate the waiting room of their lives. We treat our potential like a museum exhibit. We want to look at it. We want others to admire it. But we are terrified of actually touching it because we know that the moment we do, the glass breaks and the fantasy ends. We have become experts at being almost there. It's a sophisticated form of vanity to believe that your struggle is more poetic than your success, but the reality is much colder. A life spent in the pursuit of a shadow is still a life spent in the dark, and eventually the excuses that feel so heavy and significant today will simply sound like a quiet, unremarkable apology for never having shown up to your own existence. The evidence of your true intentions is not found in what you say you want, but in what you currently have. If your life is a cycle of unfinished projects and recurring frustrations, it is because that cycle is providing you with a psychological safety that you are not yet willing to abandon. You are not a victim of a lack of willpower. You are the beneficiary of a very successful strategy to remain unchanged. The question is no longer how to achieve your goals, but whether you are brave enough to let the current version of yourself die so that something else can take its place. Every day you spend preparing is a day you spend refusing to be. The transition from a life of potential to a life of reality is violent, lonely, and absolute. It will cost you your excuses, your comforts, and your carefully crafted identity as a seeker. Are you actually prepared for your plans to work, or are you just using the idea of a better life to make your current one more tolerable? If you were to wake up tomorrow with the discipline, the results, and the influence you claim to desire, would you embrace the burden of that power, or would you immediately look for a way to sabotage it so you could return to the familiar warmth of your own dissatisfaction? Realize that the door is not locked from the outside. You are the one holding the handle shut because you are terrified of what is waiting on the other side, a version of you that has no one left to blame. If this observation has revealed a pattern you can no longer ignore, subscribe to The Observer and activate notifications. We do not offer comfort or a way out. We only offer the clarity of what is actually happening.